story, and it was a true story. Somebody that she had talked to, or that had come to her for counsel or something, but I don't remember. But I will always remember the story. But there was a young man, and he lived in a really modest village. And he grew up, and everything was pretty simple. You know, they didn't have a lot, didn't really have communication like cell phones. Is a village, and so he would, he knew about things of the world, and he was really interested in those things. So he was young still. She didn't indicate his age, but the way it sounded was probably maybe real early. Still lived with his parents, maybe 18 to 24, something young, and just really interested in getting out into the world and learning about all these things that he had thought would be so much greater than the village. Well, anyways, his father he was a praying man, and he could always tell that he was getting a little off track. And so whenever the son came to him and said that he wanted to go and try to do something different and he wanted to move away, his father said, "I'll be waiting for your return." And he didn't want him to go, but the son went on and he left, and he got out into the world and kind of got tied up into some of the things the world offers. And so he had originally started out slow, just the way that, we've talked about over the weeks of how Satan kind of messes with our minds. And he started getting into the drinking with his friends and meeting people in bars. And that led to getting into a little bit of drugs. And that led into dealing a little bit of drugs and getting into a rougher group of people. Well, long story short, the young man, he ended up getting involved in with prostitutes with one of his friends that was a pimp, essentially just a pimp. And so he started out just paying for the prostitutes, and then eventually he got involved in helping his friends pimp the prostitutes, and then eventually they got into some trafficking where they kept the girls against their will, and they were prostituting these girls. Well, he ended up getting caught, of course, because sin always catches up with you, and he ended up in prison. And so everybody in his village, they all knew about it, and of course, he knew his parents knew about it. So whenever he got out of prison, he didn't feel like he'd be welcome back into the village or to his father at all whatsoever. And so he tried to make it out on his own, got him a place, but it was in a rough part of the city. And in that part of the city that he was at, he just really couldn't, with his background, he was having a hard time getting a good job. He ended up just not having even enough money really for food. And the living situation that he had was dangerous, and it was not a good place. And so finally one day, he just decided that he would write his father a letter. And so what he did was he wrote a letter to his dad, and that was his only way to really communicate with him. But he always remembered him saying, "I'll be waiting for your return." And he was really thinking about that modest living and how nice it was, and how much he would rather have that than what the world had to offer him. So he wrote a letter, and he asked his dad. He said they had a train that went through that village, and he asked his dad that if he would take him back, if he would just put a white ribbon around the tree in their front yard. And he said, "If I don't see the white ribbon, I'll carry on, and I'll just keep on going by, and I won't stop, and I won't bother you if you don't want me back." So he went to get on this train, and he was nervous the whole train ride going down this train, because he really just knew that he was too bad, and the whole village knew about him, and he just did not know what to do. So he was shaking and just really upset. And there was a gentleman on the train that came up to him, and he said, "Son, are you okay? Is there something that's bothering you?" And he sat down beside him, and he said, "Yeah." And he explained the whole story and told him what happened with his whole life, and how he had left the wonderful village that he lived in because he thought there was something better for him. And the man comforted him and rode along the train with him. But as they were getting closer and closer to the village, he told the man, he said, "I can't look." He said, "I'm afraid they're not going to take it." This makes me fill up with tears every time I think of this side of the story. He said, "I don't think that he'll take me back." And he said, "I'm going to just he put his head between his knees as they were getting closer. And he said, "I'll just keep my head down. Just tell me if the ribbon's there. Just tell me if it's there, and I'll stay on the train and keep going if we pass and the ribbon is not there." And so they keep on going down along the road, and he's just upset, just shaking upset. And the man taps him on the shoulder. He said, the guy says, "Well, is the ribbon there?" And he said, "Son," he goes, "the ribbon's not there, and not on the." He said, "The ribbon's not on the tree." He said the white ribbon is on every single branch of the tree. And so the man sat up on the train, and outside of that train was his father running along with the cane in hand, elderly father running with a white ribbon in his hand too, and the whole tree full of ribbons.
Wow.
So that story was so touching to me. I won't ever forget it, because in Matthew 7, 9 through 11, it says, which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone, or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? And so that's just a human, that's a human father. And I wanted to parallel that with the prodigal son. This is actually Jesus' parable. I mean, he's telling this. So this is Luke 15:11. And it says, then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger son said to him, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. After a few days, the younger son got everything together and journeyed to a distant land where he squandered his wealth on wild living. After he spent all he had, a severe famine swept through that country, and he began to be in need. So he went out and hired himself to a citizen of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods the pigs were eating, but no one would give him a thing. Finally, he came to his senses and said, how many of my father's servants have plenty of food, but here I am starving to death. I'll get up and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him, put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let us feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the other son was in the field, and as he approached the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked what was going on. Your brother has returned, he said, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older son became angry and refused to go in. So his father came out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've served you and never disobeyed a commandment of yours. You never even gave me a goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when the son of yours returns from squandering your wealth with prostitutes, you kill the fattened calf for him. Son, you are always with me, the father said, and all that is mine is yours. But it was fitting to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.